What Peter had started to do with the help of the guys sent from James was create first-class Christians and then lower-class Christians. You are a real first-class Christian if you were Jew first and then started following Jesus. But if you didn't get the Jew part, well, I mean, you're still a Christian, but I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, not really. I mean, like, you're here, but I mean, please don't sit with me as I enjoy my croissant. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're dirty. Problem 3. Influencers. Not just people that came and created confusion. When I say influencers, I mean like in our world, like celebrity, like everybody knows who they are, they're influencers. The biggest influencer, probably himself in the first century, was a guy by the name of Peter. Yes, that Peter. Walked on water Peter, that's the guy. Denied Jesus 3 times, was reinstated, that's the guy. The really close friend of Jesus, that's the Peter I'm talking about. So while this is all happening, Peter decides to visit from Jerusalem the Antioch church. Remember, Antioch is the home base of Paul and Barnabas where they were sent from to the missionary journey. So Peter comes down from Jerusalem to visit the Antioch church. He loves it. He's like, this is incredible. This is incredible. Like all these people who were not Jewish just left their false gods and are following Jesus. This is incredible. Peter is like, and he's a celebrity, right? I mean, like when Peter walks in a room, you're like, oh, that's Peter. Like the Peter we've heard, like that's Peter. Yeah, that's Peter. And he's eating dinner with them, he's like pouring into them. He's investing in people. He's teaching. He's living among them. He's just experiencing the Antioch church for all of its goodness. Everything is going so good. So good. Well, then this happens. Now, I will tell you, Paul is about to call Peter by his government name, which is Cephas. So we'll put that out there. Verse 11, chapter 2. When Cephas came to Antioch, Cephas, again, Peter. When Cephas came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face because he stood condemned. For before certain men came from James, pause. I know we're introducing a lot of people. Like, I think Peter's probably decently easy for most people. James is a little different. James is the little brother of Jesus. James is not the disciple James that spent a lot of time with Jesus. In fact, at this time, he's most likely dead. He was executed. So this is James, little brother of Jesus. Little brother of Jesus goes on to lead the Jerusalem church. He becomes a big deal. And this time, he's also a big deal. And so that's why he's not coming himself. He's sending other people. He's like, hey, go down there. So that's what James does. It makes sense. Jesus is gone. And so a family member of Jesus would have a little bit of pull. That's where James is. So James, again, leading the Jerusalem church, sends some people down. Cephas is already in Antioch, hanging out with everybody. James sends some people down. Let's go back to verse 12. For before certain men came from James, he used to eat with Gentiles, talking about Peter. So before the people came from James, Peter was eating with Gentiles. But when they arrived, he began to draw back and separate himself from the Gentiles because he was afraid of those who belonged to the circumcision group. Now, that's a great group to be a part of, by the way. That's just great. I don't know if they got t-shirts or like members only jackets, but for sure, in the first century, the circumcision was synonymous with the Jewish people, right? So when he says this, he's referencing Jews in Jerusalem. That's the idea. So that idea, even in anywhere where there was Jewish people, they could also be known as the circumcised group. That's where we are. So he was afraid of those who belonged to the circumcision group. The other Jews joined him in his hypocrisy, so that by their hypocrisy, even Barnabas was led astray. So Peter is in Antioch. He's like doing life with these new Christians, eating with them, pouring into them. James sends some people down to check out how things are going. When they get there, Peter withdraws from eating with Gentiles. And the reason he withdraws is because it's against Jewish law. It makes you unclean, right? Like that whole idea, for the entirety of the history of the Jewish people, there was this huge separation of Jews and Gentiles. And Gentiles were pagan. Gentiles were without Yahweh, without Jehovah. Everything they did was unclean. And so they separated themselves. The Jews were a holy people. They were set apart. And so they didn't do anything intermixing, especially eating. Like, I'm not talking about ceremonially eating. I mean like grabbing a sandwich at a diner eating. Like, no eating with Gentiles. So these guys show up. Peter withdraws. Now, when Peter does this, because he's an influencer, everybody's like, why is Peter doing that? Like, when Peter stops coming to dinner, everybody's like, where's Peter? And they're like, oh, I didn't see him at lunch or breakfast. Or actually, I haven't seen him eat with any of us in the, Have any of you eaten with Peter? No? This is weird. But Peter's eating a bunch with all the Jewish folks. But he's not eating with any of the non-Jewish Christians. Why is that? Paul confronts him about it. He's like, bro, both of these things can't be true. Either you were sinning by eating with the Gentiles before they showed up, or you're sinning now because you're denying them like first-class citizenship, you know what I'm saying, in the kingdom. This wasn't a conversation. This wasn't one of those things where Peter was like, I dismiss the grace given to the Gentiles. Like, I still think we'll be in heaven together. I just don't want to like eat lunch with them. That's what Peter was saying. And Paul's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? The grace of God can give us eternal life with the Father, but he can't make it to where we can eat lunch together? Are you serious? What Peter had started to do with the help of the guys sent from James was create first-class Christians and then lower-class Christians. You are a real first-class Christian if you were a Jew first and then started following Jesus. But if you didn't get the Jew part, well, I mean, you're still a Christian, but I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, not really. I mean, like, you're here, but I mean, please don't sit with me as I enjoy my croissant. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're dirty. Paul confronts him publicly. What's interesting is that we get to watch Paul mature himself in how he handles situations. Paul doesn't try and cancel Barnabas. Barnabas is actually going to be a part of missions in the future. Paul doesn't try and cancel Peter either. He simply has an open discussion in public with them because he knows that this discussion influences not just who they eat with for dinner, but it influences the kingdom as a whole. Where have you pulled away from the table? Have we been guilty of creating second-class or lower-class Christians? Maybe in dress expectations on a Sunday morning? Like, we're pretty casual, but I mean, let's be honest, even we still have some type of standard of cleanliness, right? Or maybe it's a spiritual resume bias, where we value the length of time you've attended Foundation. There's some of you who have been here for 8.5 years, since the very beginning. Do we see brand new people with the same value we see ourselves, even though we started it together? Or maybe it's a married versus single mindset, where we see the family unit and the children, and we elevate that status in a church. And we just kind of think, oh, well, single folks, they'll get there someday. They're still learning. Maybe it's worship engagement, where we assume someone's faith is weak because they don't raise their hands or sing passionately when our band leads. Maybe it's Bible knowledge pride, where we make people feel small in our small groups because they don't know the stories or the reason behind a certain beliefs. Maybe it's volunteer hierarchy, where we elevate people who are seen on stage or in public spaces and neglect those who are working or tails off behind the scene. Maybe it's giving-based worth, where people who write larger checks are catered to instead of people who are still trying to figure out, can I trust the church to give anything? Or maybe it's levels of sin, where we show a little more grace to respectable sins. But there are some sins we would just separate in terms of our fellowship with them.